are these just, disgruntled people? There's a lot of disgruntled people in the world. There's a lot of frustrated, jaded teens, but a lot of them don't, get into Trans Ams and drive them through, McDonald's windows. A lot of them don't go and buy automatic weapons and murder innocent people. So people need to wake up and realize this thing is so much deeper. And then the history of it. The history of it goes back through the Assassins, which was the Islamic, during the Crusades. The Crusaders, the Western Crusaders were absolutely stunned, you see, about how it could be that these Saracens and these Islamic warriors were so unbelievably ruthless and just so dedicated, almost had no fear of death. Of course, then they subsequently find out, after they've been in the Middle East a while, that this is a hashish-based cult. These guys are on the bong before they even get on their horses, and other drugs, other kinds of mind-altering drugs, disseminated to them by their occult leaders, people of Islamic versions of Freemasonry. And it's a very elaborate story. In fact, you can pick up this story in, I think it was the book Conspiranoia, but I'm sure that Jim Keith and others have covered this. It's a pretty elaborate story of exactly how the indoctrination process of the Islamic warriors in those days. Basically, it boils down to the fact that they condition you to believe you are an angel, you are serving Allah, and those guys are all the devils, you see, and you killing them is doing great work for Allah and the Prophet. Well, if you're mind controlled into that, you're going to be raging into war and killing and having no problem being very brave and all of that, because you're conditioned to believe that there's no such thing as death, and even after you die, you're going to be surrounded by wonderful, damsels and angelic forms and all of this. So the Templars, later especially the Crusaders, after they had married in with some of these Oriental families and had got picked up a lot of this occult knowledge, started to work it out that, wait a minute, if we could have an army, if we could have agents, if we could have captains and people in our military establishment that had this kind of dedication, we could conquer the world. You see, because remember, England, Britain, is a very small place. Holland, some of the old centers of government are not particularly big. They don't have large populations. They don't have large armies. They can't compete against the great continents of the world. Alexander the Great found that out. So, but wait a minute, if you have one man who's got the power of 10 men because he's been indoctrinated, not only is this chump going to do what you tell him to do, he's also going to be a perfect fighting machine. But it means the removal, does it not, of his normal circuitry of morality. Well, nothing could be easier. Morality, as the philosophers and psychologists have told you, is about paper thin anyway. You only have to say a few choice words to somebody and they've lost their head. So nothing could be simpler. And as these chaps found out, these experimenters, that now we understand is the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, now we understand is the, these Frankfurt School and all of these people of the 20th century. But this thing goes way back through the Assassins, through the whole drug cult, of the cult of Dionysus, where the mind-altering, again, harkens back to something I've said repeatedly in my work, is that all those things, all those modalities, all those wonderful spiritual occult practices that have the ability to take your soul up, that have the ability to enlighten you, to inspire you, to sharpen your reason, your critical ability, all those things, every one of them has the equal power in the wrong hands to do the opposite, to take you down. It's the difference between sorcery and magic. Sorcery and magic. Never end talking about this. It's a very, very important concept. And all that you see out there in the world today, especially in the media, and most of even the tinkering around with occult subjects, is a form of sorcery. And I'm not the first to have said that. And that's why there's so much insanity down the line, so much misinterpretation. Because toxic individuals in control of, occult information, it's wrong. It's going to go askew very easily. Because we have a vast misunderstanding of what all this means. But without even getting into all of that, the Bible, is the Bible sorcery or is the Bible magic? Is it a bit of both? So it goes back through the Assassins, it goes back through these, and not only them, there's been many cults in the Orient. The Thuggee is another one to be studying, where we get the word thug. Not only were these people funded and created by British money, by the East India Company, the Thuggees were never a problem before the British secret apparatus got there through the East India Company, and wanting to destroy and disempower the native Indians who resisted the infiltration of British elements, they formed a criminal organization, the Thuggee. They funded these, bong-smoking Shiva worshippers or whatever they were, Kali worshippers, who were no threat to anyone, nothing more than a simple faction easily taken care of in the region. suddenly have thousands and thousands of pounds. They're infiltrated by specialists from Britain, from the East India Company, to start plaguing the region, you see, and causing upheaval and disruption, by which the British government hid behind. The triads, you know, the Tong, I mean, the list is endless. So this understanding of allegiance and realizing what a fragile, pathetic creature human beings are anyway, so totally traumatized that it's very easy to just, you know, paint over or even completely erase the human sensibility, the human sensibilities of morality and so on. And it goes right back into the question of religion as well. Religion is very tied up into this, because you're not appealing to man's reason when you're dealing with mind control. That's the first thing. You're dealing to man's irrational self, which is why people like myself are so adamant about developing the reason and developing man's higher, you know, levels of consciousness, because then there's only chance of being immune to all of this. But that's not the agenda of religion. That's not the agenda of the mind controllers. They want to drag you down into an irrational, limbic, mammalian, reptilian, you know, level of consciousness, what the Indian Vedas would call the lower chakra drives, and keep you there permanently, so that you're confused and terribly weak, terribly psychologically disempowered. And so therefore you're going to seek stability, you're going to seek security through whatever kinds of handrails that are then provided for you by the system. You know. Again, the other side of this is you have the problem, and you have the historical issue, historical problem, but you also have a new age now in which we have the internet, we have these writers, authors, so we're catching up on the game. We have even movies on the subject, incredibly detailed movies, in fact, that, you know, look into the whole of this.
They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of snakes is under their lips. Their mouths are full of bitterness and curses. And in their paths, nothing but ruin and misery. And the fear of God is not before their eyes. They have taken the hearts and minds of our leaders. They have recruited the rich and the powerful. And they have blinded us to the truth. And our human spirit is corrupted. Why do we worship greed? Because outside the limit of our sight, feeding off us, perched on top of us from birth to death, are our owners. Our owners. They have us. They control us. They are our masters. Wake up. They're all about you, all around you.
Easy to apply nails, pre-colored in 7 luscious hues. Just...
Our impulses are being redirected. We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep.
Oh, goddamn hacker, that second damn night that asshole's cut in.
The movement was begun 8 months ago by a small group of scientists who discovered, quite by accident, these signals being sent through...
He's giving me a headache. Yeah, tell me about it. Must took the hackers months to figure out how to do this.
The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. They have created a repressive society, and we are their unwitting accomplices. Their intention to rule rests with the annihilation of consciousness. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. Please understand, they are safe as long as they are not discovered. That is their primary method of survival. To keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
All I would say is that we've got to not trust the media stories when any of these, you know, atrocities take place. You've got to really search out and seek out for yourself and not believe what, you know, the mainstream media is telling you. You have to realize that this is a very ancient thing. It's very sophisticated, and that you'll have to realize that religion plays a key part, because it deals with the emotions of man, his irrational drives, and his needs. You know, man being raped on one side of what he really is spiritually, loss of center. So when you see these Sirhans, you see in these Hinckleys and these apparently lost souls, you know, who are easily manipulated, you got to realize that that is the guy next door. This is pretty much walking around in the world. But the good thing about the modern age is that you have people like Ted Gunderson and John DeCamp, you see, and whistleblowers from within. Ted Gunderson, of course, was very senior in the FBI. You know, John DeCamp was a senator. You know, you have people from within the system now. You have, I can't remember his name, but in MASH, the show MASH, you know, B.J. Honeycutt, the guy, his name will come to me in a minute. He has made a personal investigation into child abuse and satanic circles. So you have famous actors, you know, Lee Majors and Robert Mitchum have done movies on this. You know, certain Albert Finney with Looker. You know, there's a lot of movies out there that have been covering this. Of course, The Manchurian Candidate immediately jumps to mind. With fantastic film with who was in that? It was Frank Sinatra. You know, lots of elements there, and that is not fiction. That is absolutely true. With key words, key phrases. Mark isn't it a coincidence that Mark Hinckley and Chapman, you know, both were reading Catcher in the Rye? You know, so just even these small sort of anecdotal connections, and the way they do it is also very interesting. How the whole process of how an actual mind control slave is made runs along pretty typical lines. They have traditional ways of doing it. It's very much based on your own profile when they've been studying you independently without your knowledge. And also, of course, we find out that many of these individuals who've gone down that road, who've been so abused this way, were in fact involved with the corps, or the you know, the United Nations, or the media, or the military. You cannot even document the cases of the people who've gone on to commit these crimes, including Oswald and Son of Sam, David Berkowitz, and other people. They've all had some sort of background in the military, or they've all worked for some sort of United Nations group, or military corps, or Peace Corps, or whatever. They've had some tie-in with some major orgs, and sometimes a lot more, sometimes full-blown, you know, military intelligence kinds of organizations. And we even know that the conspiracy movement and, you know, the New Age movement is infiltrated by these people. There's all sorts of levels on this, all the way from the spiritual level, with religion affecting your mind and disempowering you in order to control every action, every thought you think, all the way down to this more street level, you know, mind control, where kids are recruited from school because teachers who are in the pay of these, you know, think tanks observe the child, observe their spiritual tendencies, observe their introverted nature, because you'll always hear the same refrain. It's a very, very common refrain, which you pick up in Mark Hinckley, because he specifically was a virtuous man, actually, and his crimes were born out of a virtue that was manipulated. His virtue was to save the young from all the pestilence and evil that he saw that was rampant in the adult world. So the mind controllers would have picked up on this, and they would have looked at his profile and say, this man is, you know, kind of humanitarian, he's a bit of a loner. So he was a kind of a loner in school, yet as a loner he joined the military. Why would a loner, see, there's a contradiction right there, and they pick up on that. Why would a loner be joining something which is not only collectivized, it's highly collectivized, it's very regimented? So then they pick up conflict in his personality, and then he joins a collectivized kind of setup like the military, and then is still super introverted. His buddies will say, oh, we didn't go on with him, he never spoke, he was dead quiet. So you've got little contradictions there. Why would a man even like that be compelled to join something totally antithetical to his nature? Was he compelled to do that? Or was he trying to break out of his own, you know, personality mold and try to do that as a way to, you know, heal himself from what he thought was a malignancy of nature? Because if you're introverted and live in the West or live in America, they'll make you feel that you're malignant, all right. It's not that introversion is malignant, quite the contrary. As the psychologists know, it's the extrovert personality type that's the easiest hypnotized. Ha ha ha. The extrovert personality, you know, Mr. Sunshine, you know, the one-season world, you know, getting gung-ho guy who's super successful, got everything that the material world can offer, he goes under in 2 seconds flat, but it's the introvert that you kind of, you know, manipulate. Well, so this is the, again, contradictions.